We're live. It says we're live, Michael.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey.
We're live.
Well, good morning from Lithuania, and good morning to you, Volker. Very
Yeah.
interesting topic today. Why don't you just sort of tell me a little bit what we've just said before we started?
What did I say? I said the GC index. I don't know much about the GC index, to be honest. And I thought you could kick us off with the GC index. I mean, I've seen many different indexes over the years, so I would assume the GC index isn't too dissimilar. But who am I to judge? So I thought maybe you can kick us off with a little bit of GC index, and then I can
Yeah,
add
sure.
some emotional intelligence flavor to it.
Yeah, sure. So one of the great things about doing this type of work is that um, when you're working with companies to help them to change and to help teams form and to help individuals through coaching and personal development, is that you sort of get into this concept of psychology, and you get into the concept of their skills, and you get into the concept of their practice. And we have those three areas really well covered: skills and practice, normally in a CV. And we normally then have psychometrics that we put into how people turn up, how they behave, how they approach certain things, which is great, but it's not going to help the company, and it's not help the individuals when they're already employed. And it generally doesn't answer the question is, what are they going to want to do, and what are they really good at in terms of going about how they deliver their particular capabilities and skills. So what the GC index is, the first organometric recognized by the British Psychology Society in that very field. And what it does is it takes an area of, and we're not doing any slides today, but let me just say briefly, it takes into 5 areas. It takes into the area of first of all, what we call the game changer. Then it takes into what we call the strategist. Then it takes into account what we then call the implementer. And then finally, it takes into account the what we call the polisher. And quite simply, and then in the middle, those are all scored individually, and in the middle we have the playmaker, and this is how somebody actually turns up and does their works with others within the team, and it's a derived score, so it's their role at facilitation and development. And as we look at that, let's just think a little bit about how you might want to do your role, and how people do those roles. So, and what I mean by that is it doesn't determine what type of role you're going to be good at. So it doesn't say you are a skills-based individual in a specific way, like a psychometric score might point you towards. What it does is it says, do you approach things from two axes, which is pragmatism, and that's where the strategist and implementer are. And do you approach it more from an obsessional perspective? So you're focused and you're really thinking about how you can constantly improve and change something. And that's where the game changer and the polisher sit. And then you have the imagination people, and that's where the crossover, and this is a horizontal measure, and action is the other horizontal measure. And the imagination people are the game changers, the people who develop the future. And then there's the strategists, are the people who order the future and look about how the future will be mapped and made out. And they tend to be very ideas focused. So it's imagination, ideas focused, and then you have the pragmatic part of that and the obsessive part of that. And then finally, you've got the implementers and the polishers who are action orientated, task focused. What are they going to do to get things done today and with what we already have? And you need all those things to come together to create playmakers. And playmakers are people who orchestrate, what we call orchestrate the future. They're the people who pull all the individuals together and ensure that all the good ideas, all the best planning, all the best implementation, and all the best continuous improvement come together. And so that's really what a GC index is. And we talk about scores in these areas being people's proclivities, i.e., where they have energy. So in other words, what it defines is what your energy is. And then if you've developed energy as you have energy to be a strategist, then what it talks about is how you've developed skills in that area, and you combine skills and your proclivity in that area to become that becomes your impact, your highest impact as a strategist. You enjoy thinking out and practicing what it is we're going to do to have the best impact in the area of future and planning. So that's really how it comes together. I suppose when we talk about it in relating to the EQ, this is most of all that answers a question that for me we don't ask enough and we don't answer enough, and that's because up to now we haven't had the tool. And that is one of, well, what is this individual going to do when they start working in this role? So it massively increases self-awareness, because you yourself become aware of what motivates you, what is that is your proclivity. And then also it allows you to look at how you come across at others in terms of your demand. And then it allows you to also accept how others are going to interact on a project or a program. And then finally, it looks at things like, well, what are you motivated to do? If you have energy for this, if you have a proclivity for it, that means you're going to be motivated to do it. Well, absolutely. It means that you're going to spend time gaining skills, going to spend time understanding how best to deliver that part of that role. And that's, a motivational factor. And finally, you've got the two areas of empathy and self-control that go towards this. And self-control is particularly useful when you're able to look at why someone is diving into the detail, for example. Why are we still talking about, I thought we completed this project? Well, they are a polisher. They want to be continually improving what we do. And then you have empathy. And that is a way in which, as you know, because you're the person who's best at this, is how you start to tap into other people's proclivity. So the whole area of EQ and the whole area of GC index absolutely are streamlined to make individuals, teams, and organizations function better. Is that enough of an explanation for you?
I think I'm all right now. So.
You want me Go ahead.
I should be
no, I can hear you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
If not, I can look at. No, should hear me. You should hear me okay. If not, so that makes a lot of sense, right? So empathy, obviously, self-awareness, right? Two key elements of emotional intelligence. Whether you use the EQI model or if you use, the good old Daniel Goleman model, which simplifies it a little bit more. But it shows really, if I understand the GC index correctly, the GC index tells you where your energy goes, whilst EQ tells you how to manage your energy in that particular field, right?
Yes. And the critical part of this for me is that we spend very little time understanding enough about what others, as well as yourself, but what others see as their role in life. What is their strength in life? And how do you relate to people rather than asking them, why are they the way they are, which is what a lot of psychometrics do? This really focuses in on what we call the organometric. In other words, well, this is what you want to do. This is what you become skilled at doing because this is where your proclivities sit, the GC index measure. And therefore, it allows everybody in the business to start looking at where these proclivities, if you like, where these impacts can be best applied to ensure that the company is its most effective and the individual is most effective, and then the team is most effective. To give you one example, I've worked both in insurance and in betting and in gaming and in banking. And for example, you don't want to find that your the area of compliance is being managed by people who are driven by game changing. Their job is not to change compliance.
Yeah.
What you want people there to really focus in on, and that's where the majority of the impact has, is in areas of implementation, strategic planning. You need a plan, and you need also people to continuously improve what you're doing. And that all needs to be pulled together in a very cohesive way by playmakers. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that you don't have people who are game changers and ideas creators, but that's you only need them for a very short period of time in the overall cycle of compliance. So that's what we try and help teams to pull together. Whereas if you're talking about new products in the financial area or new product, so if you're launching, we're launching Monzo, or we're launching Revolut, or we're launching another prepaid card, whatever it is that you've come up with, there you want the game changers. People who go, well, the way I'm using my Visa MasterCard is not the way I want to spend and use my money. I need a different way of doing it. And these people come up with those game-changing ideas, and therefore you need strategists and game changers to come together to develop what's the best way of both developing and delivering these products. And then you need people who are going to go ahead and implement, and then you need continuous improvement. But that's how it comes across.
So when we go back to the analogy we did last time we spoke, right? It's a football field. I'm
Yes.
sure the listeners will remember the football field. It's a little bit
Yes.
like the GC index tells you which position you play, right? Where you strategically position your players, whilst EQ tells you how well you play with the others, right? How your position impacts yourself as a player, and then the relationship with the other players. Would that be a fair assumption to make?
I think that is a significant part of how you can use these two tools together. That whole aspect that you're discussing, which is, it's not just what are the skills of the individual, but how do they want to deploy them? What is it they're going to turn up and say, I'm someone who likes sitting in the middle of the field looking at how we're playing. They get joy. And we often talk about football teams where there are apparently a player or two who don't really contribute as much as you would expect, but they are constantly guiding the game. You can hear them talking, you can hear them shouting at other players, you can hear them discussing what's going on the field. And they are definitely your strategist, or indeed, but they may have other skills, but it's likely to be the person who is a playmaker. And they might not necessarily have all the EQ to understand how they make that work with other players on the field. And there'll be vice captains and others if you talk about a rugby field, they'll often tell you there's 4, 5, even 6 leaders on the field doing different things. And I think that's a particular example where EQ and GC come together.
That's really interesting. So we should really work closer together to deliver that for some leadership teams. I think it's a great synergy.
It is a great synergy, and it allows, the thing that it allows for me, and I think we ought to spend some time talking about EQ a bit more, and where the pitfalls and where
we can do, sorry.
Yeah, let's do that in a second. But I just to finish off your point, for me, a GC index takes the cogs of a gearbox and it puts oil in, or it adds butter to a cake. It brings everything together and allows everybody to interact in the way that they are best suited. And I think that's where we can also now talk about where the EQ fits into what we're talking about here, because the GC is something that really does oil the wheels, as you might want to say, not getting too men's own boys familiar with engineering, but that's what it does.
Interesting. I mean, I want to be honest. I just ChatGPT'd a little bit more details around that, and it's quite interesting. If you're looking at the traits of the GC index, so if you're looking at the reality tester, right, that you mentioned, self-actualization is probably the EQ skill, if you like, that is most relevant to that player. So self-actualization. Then for independence, it would be impulse control, right? Which would make perfect sense to me from what you said about the independent. We already said, empathy and interpersonal relationship. That's if I understand that correctly, that would be for the playmaker, right?
Yes, I think that playmakers are more likely to play the orchestration role. So they're more likely to look at the introvert in the room and ask them whether they feel they've contributed enough, whether they feel that they have added everything they have to add to the conversation.
Yeah. So then that would make sense. Well, it's the implementer. That would be problem solving and stress tolerance.
The way I look at it, yes, there isn't a swap of one description to another.
Okay.
But an implementer, from an EQ perspective, in terms of being empathetic to them, you might be during a period of planning or a period of ideas creation. And you might have one or two people in the room who really are saying, can we just get on and do something now? Can we do that? They might even say, can we implement something, please? And what they're telling you from an emotional perspective is they have a very strong desire to get on and do. And being aware of that makeup, and them being aware that this is really where they want to have impact, where they have a proclivity, where they have their energy, then it allows them to take a step back and say, okay, no, I understand why I feel like the way I feel at the moment.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense then, because I'm playing around with that because I'm trying to find an overview where we can say, as a strategist, that's a key EQ skill. So reality testing, self-actualization, game changer, impulse control, which we have with the 15 subsets of which we introduced, a couple sessions ago, and really can say, okay, these are the key skills for each individual, right? So the playmakers, as I just said, right, empathy, interpersonal relationships are key, right, because they're bringing everything together, and so you can. I'm trying to think how you do that practically, actually. So would you do the GC index first, or do you do the EQ eye test first, or do you do them both in parallel and then see where people's role best align?
That's a bit like where's the best place to start on your journey around a circle? And the answer is always, well, start from where you are, because you're going to come back to where you started. And for me, I think what you've identified is that why don't you start where you are, where you have traction, where you have credibility, where you have desire, where you have a wish, an intent, all these nice positive adjectives, and just start. So if somebody's had an EQ evaluation and found it very useful, why are they not talking about it to the rest of the team? Why are they not discussing? I particularly like empathy when you first start. And so I always enjoy hearing somebody tell a personal story that allows other people to empathize with them. And I think that's a really I love this. I was taught this, or I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe longer, about how telling stories allows people to personally empathize with you and to build EQ with somebody. So for me, it's not a case of what comes first. It's a case of why we need, I would say this, why we need professional practitioners like ourselves to ensure that a company and individuals get the most out of where they start their journey, and they don't go too far on one part of the journey without accepting that they need to pull in other parts to make it a whole story, make it a widely accepted experience.
Yes, I mean storytelling and empathy, right? It's people love personal stories. I guess that's what it is, right? They like to connect, whether it's a hero's journey or not, right? We all like to hear about other people's experience because there's something we can connect to, and that's what empathy really is, right? And yeah, so that's why storytelling really works, and that's why storytelling for leaders. If leaders tell a good story, people empathize with them, right? They connect stronger with them. So
I have a very good personal story. When I first there was an executive chairman of a company, and we'll leave it at that, no more descriptor. And this individual was without doubt very strong in their empathy capability, their ability to deliver to a client what the client needed, what the client hadn't thought about and needed persuading of. They're in a particular area of, should we just say, agency, right? And they were really very good at this. I mean, phenomenally good, world class. I mean, I could name some of their clients, and these are big names, world class organizations. And this is, relatively speaking, a small company. And we sat down and did the GC index together. And I had an experience in the past that I couldn't really explain to him. And that experience was, we'd done something called the Marshmallow Tower test. And I'd said, I don't know whether you've ever built a marshmallow tower with spaghetti and string and tape, but it's a really interesting team building exercise for many reasons. Anyway, he had to leave the meeting and had come back with only 3 minutes of the 17 minutes left, and had started dissecting his team's work on building a tower.
Yeah.
And when we did the GC index, he came up as a massive polisher. And I went,
really?
Yes. I mean, he has skills he's very driven by his implementer and strategist, right? But he's a very strong polisher. And the light went on, and he suddenly went, that's what you talked about. And it did for me too. That's what you meant when I came back into the room and started. I said, yes. All you wanted to do was to polish and continuously improve. And that overtook your logical piece. That is, it's done. It's finished. You can't add anything in the 3 minutes that's going to improve what's here. What you need to do is to support the implementation of what's already been designed, not redesign what has already been designed. And it was a fascinating, fantastic experience, because it just, and he to this day still says to me, that was a remarkable reveal. And he has told other people to take the GC index because it was so revealing for him. He said, you need to do this because it'll show you where your driving impact, where you want to have your energy put into, where it completely bleeds across your empathy and it completely bleeds across your EQ, because that desire suddenly, the things that you want to do suddenly means that you're not self-aware. It means that you're not it being in self-control. You're not empathizing. Your social skills are taking a battering because you have this massive energy impact to want to drive this forward.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
equally, yeah. Sorry, go on.
It's a great exercise, right? The spaghetti marshmallow exercise. I mean, to be honest, any team exercise, and because it brings these attributes to front, right? Because people can't help themselves, right? If you have someone who's really bossy and wants to lead, that's what they're going to do. Because they're in their natural environment, right? It's whether they play messy like in kindergarten or be a little bit more civilized, playing with food. But that's great. That's a great intro to the GC index. Actually, I really enjoyed that.
Well, well, thank you. I also think it's a good introduction to how, if you become overly dependent, if you like, or overly committed to one tool, it's the classic. If the only tool you have in your box is a hammer, every job starts to look like a nail.
Yeah.
And one of the great things, I also do stuff with Clifton Strengths. We do stuff where, with coaching, professional coaching, we do supervisory coaching. We work with you on EV. We work with you on other stuff that you do. We've got other members of the team who focus, who've done disc profiling, who've done a number of other profiling tools. But the key is always, what are you trying to achieve? And why are you doing it like this?
Yeah.
And we used to have a phrase, well, we still probably do have a phrase in Agile, seeking the value. And one of the things that we talk about, all of us talk about with clients, is what is the value you're seeking to pull out? And that is, I think that's really critical as we move things forward. What is the value we're trying to pull out? And therefore, don't reach for a hammer, reach for engagement, and then think about what's the right tool.
Yeah. Michael, it's 10 o'clock. We're out of time already. That was really quick. I know we're planning to go a little bit deeper on that topic in the future. So I think that was a really good first introduction to the topic and how these, how emotional intelligence GC index, you mentioned the strengths, profiling, by Clifton. I'm trained in different modality, but they're all the same, right? But they're all, pursuing the same goal. Maybe we do a marshmallow exercise ourselves in one of the half-hour sessions we're doing. I think that would be quite fun.
that would be more than fun.
We just need to be in one location. I don't think we can do it virtually. But
I think that we have an audience that accept that this is a free forum, not a structured forum. In terms of, we don't come here with a pile of slides. What we come here is our own experience to help people. It leaves us just to say thank you very much, I think, to the audience. I'm not looking at how many of us are still here, but thank you for all those that join. Thank you for all those that watch, and we have a large audience that pick up on the video and watch it at a later date on our YouTube channel. And just to emphasize that, you've got youtube.com/@CultureWorks Consortium is the way in which you can watch this in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Thank you, Volker. Until next time. Bye-bye.